Enterprise and Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. Got Steve Camarota on. He's with an organization called it's called CIS, which is the Center for Immigration Studies. You folks have been on my program many times. You do great stuff, great things, helping to keep Americans informed on the important issue of immigration. Welcome.
Oh, well, thanks for having us back.
By the way, there's a ton of articles over at usdailyreview.com just in the last couple of weeks. If you go to usdailyreview.com, put in Center for Immigration Studies, you'll see several by them. And we love tapping into the good work you're doing. You guys are doing some pretty enlightening stuff right now and pointing out the fact that if the problem in America is social inequality, which if you hear every speech that Barack Obama gives on economics, you would think that that was the single biggest problem facing America today. The last thing in the world you'd want to do is pass this Amnesty bill, correct?
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. Look, I mean, just to give you a couple quick examples, I'll give you two. 1 out of every 3 children living in poverty today lives in an immigrant household. 1/3 of the uninsured in America today lives in an immigrant household. And the transformational effect of immigration on inequality on a state like California is really quite something. In 1970, California was one of the more equitable states in terms of its income distribution. Today, California's income is more skewed in terms of, from top to bottom than was Mississippi's in 1970. So California has one of the most skewed incomes now in America today.
Yeah, and when did you say, what period did it have a more equal distribution?
Back in 1970, before they ended up with an enormous wave of immigration over the last 40 years.
Right. That's exactly right. And so it's kind of interesting. And meanwhile, I think indicative of this is that you're seeing a large number of blacks out there who are protesting this. They're coming out vocally opposed to this. In fact, there's supposed to be a pretty large march on Washington, D.C. to protest it in July.
It's my understanding, yeah, that's the case as well. That there is significant support among the very top leadership in the black community, but a whole lot of pastors and regular folks have gotten together and said, this is not in our interest. It creates job competition. It creates competition for scarce public resources. It has a crowding out effect politically on black representation. And so I think although the leadership or the very top of black organizations tend to be in favor of this kind of thing, I think a very large fraction of the African American community has real questions.
Yeah, no question about it. Talking about immigration reform and the fact that what we got today in the works appears to be anything but that. And so I didn't watch even what happened on I guess it was on Tuesday. What happened on that vote? Do you know?
It passed. There were 15 votes against it, and I think 80-something in favor of it because not everybody voted. But, it did pass. It passed about what everyone expected. But understand, it's a procedural vote. It was 82 to 15. So a few people didn't vote. But the way it works is that it's a procedural vote. So they have decided that they're going to have the debate on the bill. They're going to amend the bill, and we'll see what happens. It will be sometime in the next maybe 2-3 weeks when they actually have the key vote, which will be to end the debate. That's called cloture in the Senate, and the people the people who want this bill will need 60 votes to do that. If they only get 59, then they can't. They won't get cloture.
Yeah. What's the likelihood of that?
I would say it's about 50-50 at this point. I mean, in some sense, it kind of depends on, well, in a way, your listeners. If they call, constantly telling their senators they don't like it, then it probably won't pass.
You know what city you're talking to, right?
Well, I'm sorry?
You know what city I'm in, right?
You are in Dallas, right?
No, I'm in Houston.
Houston, I'm sorry.
So you know what state I'm in. So do you think Ted Cruz or John Cornyn are going to be a problem on this particular bill?
Cruz probably won't. He'll vote against it. Cornyn says, he kind of wants to vote for it.
Yeah.
But I think his constituents won't let him, and I think he senses that. Having said that, he did vote to start the debate, whereas 15 members did not. So I think that I think Cruz did too. I'm looking at the list. Yeah, Cruz. Maybe he didn't vote on the. It doesn't look like Cruz voted. That's interesting.
Well, that is interesting.
Yeah,
I was surprised to hear that Rand Paul. I don't know for sure, but Rand Paul was not one of the ones who voted against it.
No, Paul is like his father in many ways, kind of open borders. He does not. He says, well, you have to enforce the law, but he has a very narrow view of the issue. He doesn't seem to know anything about what the data show on immigrant use of public services, and he doesn't seem to know anything about what the data show on immigrants' political preferences, because if he did, he'd know they entirely disagree with him on the substance of policy. Just as, immigrants tend to want more expansive government, higher taxes, more government regulation. They support Obamacare. They support gun regulation at very high rates. The one thing you can say about America's immigrant community, you could say lots of positive things. Most come to work. Most are hardworking. But the one thing you can say pretty safely is they are definitely not libertarian. They definitely disagree with Ron Paul on almost every policy issue, at least domestic policy issue, and yet he wants to substantially increase the number of people allowed into the country who will vote against the things that he wants. So it's kind of interesting. Again, he has a very narrow view. He just says, well, it's a free society and people should have a right to come and that sort of thing. And that's his thinking. He doesn't recognize the political implications. I mean, let's face it. If immigration continues, and I'm just talking here legal immigration, it's likely that in the next 10 years or so, Texas will become a battleground state, and over the next 20 years...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is legal immigration. This is not illegal immigration. Legal immigration is over 1 million new people a year. Down the road, 700,000 of them get citizenship, and they split 2-to-1 Democratic. And the reason they do is they overwhelmingly agree with the Democratic Party. And in a democracy, and this is currently right, that the political system must reflect the views of the people. And you're changing the people in the country, and so the political system must reflect that. So if we have a situation where immigration is allowed to continue at this level, and I should point out it's the business community in Texas that's always advocating allowing more and more people in, the state will flip to be Democratic. That might happen almost at this point anyway, but it'll certainly happen if legal immigration runs at over 1 million a year.
Yeah. All right. Talking about immigration issues, which what you just named is one of the reasons why our founding fathers were anti-democrat, anti-democracy. And a republic is not a what do they say? A representative democracy. That's not what a republic is. A republic means rule by law. And if you look at our Constitution as it was originally written, the democratic aspects were very, very few and far between.
It's a very fair point. But the bottom line is, in modern America, if you dramatically increase the number of voters who want the government to provide health care, over time the government will provide more and more health care. If you increase the number of voters who generally want to see higher taxes on the more affluent sections of our society, eventually that's what you'll see in public policy.
Yep.
You could argue that some of these things really are in conflict with the Constitution. I recognize that. But in the real world in which we actually live, you fundamentally increase the number of people who want it, and you're much more likely to get it. I mean, that's just the reality, and that's what immigration does.
Yeah, no question about it. Well, listen, I appreciate your time. How do we get more information? And one in particular, when people call John Cornyn, which they probably should do, when heard to call Ted Cruz as well, just to play it safe. What do you want them to say?
Well, I mean, it's up to them. If they like the bill, then they should tell him to vote for it. And if they don't, they would tell him explicitly not to vote for cloture and vote against the bill. It can't be salvaged. So, I mean, it's up to your listeners to decide what they think they want. But if they oppose it, then that's what they should say. I oppose this bill. Please don't vote for it.
Yeah. Thanks so much for being with us.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. When we come back, we're going to have much, much more for you. I do want to encourage you to check out CIS.org. Great organization. We have them on often. Bring kind of a reasoned, balanced approach to immigration, not the extremes of the fair side, and certainly not the extremes of those minority groups that want to eliminate borders. I'm Kevin Price. You're listening to The Price of Business.